Hello, I'm Nami.
And I'm Olivia, and
Welcome to Climate Action Figures.
Well, hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Climate Action Figures. My name, as always, is John Whidden, and last week we talked with Miriam and Cora from Future Leaders Youth Council. And as it turns out, they weren't the only youth from that organization with big ideas. So this week on the show, you are going to love what Nami and Olivia have to say. But first, this week's quick fix from Pat in Medicine Hat. Pat says, buy secondhand when possible. Reuse, repair, reduce. I love that modification on the usual 3 R's, Pat. And by the way, we will soon be out of quick fixes from audience members, so unless you want me to start making things up, please remember to send in your quick fix to us at climateactionfigures@gmail.com. And now, welcome Olivia and Nami.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for being here. What do you two think about Pat's quick fix today?
I really like it. I personally really like going to the thrift store. This shirt I actually got last week from the thrift store. So I think buying secondhand and even giving to secondhand thrift stores really helps.
Excellent. Olivia?
Totally agree. I think it's great. And I think not enough people know the amazing things you can find at thrift stores for great prices. And yeah, so much better than just buying or fast fashion. So
That's for sure. Well, last week we heard a little bit about Future Leaders Youth Council. So why don't you tell us about your experience with the organization? For example, how did you first hear about it?
I first heard about it through the Biosphere's newsletter that they were starting a new youth environmental group in town. And I was kind of interested in it. So stopped by and just found a bunch of people who had the same values as me. And yeah, really enjoyed the environment that it created. And just being able to connect with like-minded people here in town was really great.
Nami, just before you tell us a little bit about your experience with the organization, Olivia, you mentioned a newsletter. Where would people find that if they were looking for that?
I think they could find that through the Biosphere's website. So the Biosphere Institute from Canmore. There's a bunch of great resources on there.
Oh, great. And Nami, how did you hear about this organization? How did you get involved?
I heard about it actually through school. Heidi, the leader of the Future Leaders Youth Council, she came to our school at one of our sustainability meetings, and she kind of let us know that she was putting together this program. So I joined it, I think, about 2 years ago now, and it's really been an amazing experience. I can't believe it's already been 2 years, actually. Yeah, crazy.
What's been your favorite thing about this organization so far?
I think honestly how community oriented it is and how much we've done really out in the community, because I find that school, you're kind of just in the classroom. Whereas through the Biosphere, we've been able to tour around and, for example, go to the Rome Transit Hub for our local bus or tour the local waste management facility too. So I really like how interactive it is in that way.
Olivia, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I totally agree. So many neat experiences that I never would have been able to do otherwise if it weren't for this organization. So definitely learned a lot about our community and sustainability within that. And yeah, super informative and really, really great.
Well, the Rome Transit is a perfect segue because last week we talked briefly with your colleagues, Olivia and Cora, about a Rome Transit video you made. And last week, Cora told us that each person had a specific character, and I should ask you about your character in the video. So what did that character mean to you?
For me, I was a old lady with a book and her tea on the bus. And the point was we had a bunch of different people was just to show how the Rome buses are like public transit is for everyone and not just like a specific certain group of people. So that was my role.
And then my role was being kind of a rich noble lady from the higher class. And I had a big wig on, sunglasses. And I think I also had like a fedora hat and then a big coat. So yeah, we all had very different roles.
Well, it's a fun video, and I will definitely post a link to that video on our Facebook and Instagram feed. So listener, you can go out and have a look at that if you like. Now, have you heard, you two, that we have our very own engineer on this podcast?
Oh, wow.
Cool.
So we are going to jump in with one of our engineer questions because one of the listeners wrote in, actually a bunch of the listeners wrote in, it was a whole class. Mr. Bozer's grade 6 class at Dr. Ken Sauer School in Medicine Hat, Alberta, asked a question for our engineer. And what they asked was, can we reduce emissions from gas cars? So before we let our engineer Jeff talk about that, do you two think there's some way we can reduce emissions from gas vehicles?
I'd say I don't really know the science behind it, but like to not idle or like warming your car up in the winter, like you don't need to run it for half an hour before you get in. Only running your car when absolutely necessary.
I think definitely, I'm not sure about the technical part of it, but I do agree that there's definitely probably some more action-based things, like even simply taking the car less or avoiding idling too. But I'm actually very curious if there are some like scientific technical aspects too.
All right, well, we're going to find out about that. So let's go over to Jeff.
Well, hi, John. Thanks for having me back again. And wow, what a great question that is. And you know what? The answer is absolutely yes. We can reduce emissions from gas and diesel cars. Well, how do we do that? Well, first of all, drive a smaller car. The less weight you're moving around, the less gas you're going to use, the lower your greenhouse gas emissions. Or you can use a similar size car, but with a smaller engine. Hey, we all want something that's as much fun to drive as a race car, right? But for that, you generally need a bigger engine. But let's be honest. Do we really need that much power? I mean, most vehicles on the road right now, they've got a way bigger engine than they actually need. And sure, there are times when you need a bigger engine, like, if you're towing a heavy trailer, for example. But
Right.
do we really need a great big 6-liter engine in a 3-ton extended cab truck to get to piano lessons? I mean, come on, really? I don't think so. But you know what, John? That's probably not what they actually meant. What they probably wanted to know was, is there something you can do with the existing vehicle you've got, the one you're already driving around, to reduce emissions with that one, right? Well, again,
Right.
the answer is yes, there absolutely are ways to reduce emissions from the car you already have. First of all, like I just said before, lighten the load. The less it weighs, the less fuel it's going to use. So take that hockey bag out of the back. Take all that extra stuff you're carting around out and leave it at home. You don't need it there. You're going to use less fuel. And therefore, you're going to have lower emissions. Then take off the bike rack and the roof rack if you're not actually using them. Those things are just horrible for aerodynamics. They can increase your fuel consumption by as much as 20%. And don't stomp on the gas and just race ahead every time the light turns green. Generally, just slow down. If you're doing 120 kilometers an hour, you're going to use maybe 20% more fuel than you would at 100. Don't
Wow.
idle your vehicle for a whole long time. It wastes gas. It puts unnecessary wear and tear on your engine. It produces unnecessary emissions. And keep your car properly maintained. Get your tires at the right pressure and keep them there. Make sure the exhaust system is in good shape, including the catalytic converter. Really important. And use the air conditioner sparingly. It puts a lot of load on the engine, so it has to burn more gas. And if your car has a sports mode and an economy mode, use the economy mode and then actually drive that way. Or, hey, maybe just drive a little bit less, walk more, cycle more, take public transit more. But,
Great
John,
points. Thanks,
that's
Jeff.
probably not actually what Mr. Bozer's class meant either. I did warn you, John, that if you ask an engineer a question, you're going to get, well, that depends. And this really depends on what were they actually asking. Maybe what they really wanted was some gadget they could plug into their existing car or something to pour into the fuel tank that's going to cut their emissions without them having to change the way they actually drive or anything. Do you think maybe that was it? Well, this
That might have
time,
been.
I'm afraid this time the answer is probably not, John. All those things that get advertised on the internet and on late night TV, they're not likely going to do anything substantial. And in fact, most of them actually seem to make matters worse. I've never seen an actual single claim that has credible test data to back it up. It's just hype. Now, it may be out there somewhere, but I've certainly never seen it.
Right.
So
and
if you want to cut the emissions from a gas or diesel vehicle, John, you really need to use a smaller, more efficient engine in a smaller, lighter, more fuel-efficient car, or you need to change the way you drive, or both. It's not magic. It's just physics and
Right.
thermodynamics
Uh-huh.
and chemistry and math.
Good. Well, that's great. Thanks for that, Jeff. Apparently, you have to be careful with engineers. Get them started, and it can be hard to get them stopped. Perhaps we'll have a little chat about that later. Seriously, though, That's some great information, and I'm sure Mr. Boser and his class will have some great things to talk about now. So what do you two think about those ideas?
I think they're all very interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Are there any of those that you already do in your families?
I would say maybe the bicycling one, especially in the summer. I really enjoy cycling. So even just going downtown to run some errands.
So just
Sometimes
trying
I'll
not to use the car as much. All right.
exactly.
How about you, Olivia?
Yeah, definitely. We try to use public transit or bike or walk places, but I thought the air conditioning one was really interesting because that never occurred to me, and it's very smart.
There
Yeah.
you go. I drive my family crazy because I turn the air conditioning off as much as possible in the summer. All right. Well, we have come to the time in the show when we share our climate actions, and there's two of you, so you each get to share your own climate action. What are you doing to mitigate climate change these days?
So for mine, what I'm really trying to do is just working on like sustainable transport. I feel like, especially in Alberta, like as soon as you hit 16 and get your driver's license, there's kind of a lot of pressure almost to drive everywhere and get your license, and it's a big thing. But I'm really trying to just like, do I need to drive or can I take the bus? Can I walk? Can I bike? And especially in Canmore, it's great. There's so many great options for public transport. And so, yeah, it's like choosing driving, like only if it's necessary, not if it's just the easy way to go. Um, that's really what I've been trying to focus on.
And one thing I've actually been focusing on is simply like just being educated in the first place about what is happening. Like even through the Future Leaders Youth Council, we've learned so much. So I feel like before even taking those big steps, you can also just simply be aware about what is happening and educate yourself on climate change. And especially on social media and with Google these days, there's so much information out there and there's just so much to learn. So I think that's a really important step for me that I focus on right now, and I hope to focus on more in the future too.
Oh, very interesting. And can I put you on the spot, Nami, and say what's something that you've
Yeah.
learned anywhere about the environment that has been a big learning for you in the last year, let's say?
I think honestly, it's how much the small actions make a big difference. Even with at home, I do composting, and our town has a composting program. And even through small actions like that, it makes a big difference. And through Future Leaders, we're also educating ourselves and working on that too. Even going to the waste management facility, for example. So there's been a lot of instances like that.
And I should give Olivia a shot at that too, if you want it. Anything you want to share that a big learning for you in the last year or so?
How many, like, there are a lot of things that people can do. I feel like there's a lot of like this hopeless narrative around climate change, but there's actually so many little actions that do make a big difference that, yeah, you just have to do a bit of research and you can make a change. And that, yeah, make an impact.
Right. And on the subject of hopelessness, I'd love to wrap the interview up by asking you each what gives you hope in the world today?
I would say for me, what gives me hope is youth activism and the younger voices being heard. Even that through us, like being on this podcast, for example, I feel like even though now it's the big adults and leaders and political leaders that are making all the decisions, in reality, in a few decades from now, it'll be us youth who are really taking the lead on climate change. So when I see young people, not only teenagers, but even like elementary students who are passionate about climate change, it really gives me hope for a brighter future.
And how about you, Olivia?
For me, I'd say definitely meeting other people and connecting with other people who share the same values and really care about the environment. And then also spaces like this podcast or the Biosphere Institute that encourage youth to get together and collaborate and give us the spaces so that we can make an impact.
Well, that's great. And you know what gives me hope is imagining you two in leadership roles in the future. That gives me great hope. So thanks for giving me that hope. And thank you so much for joining us on the program today. It's been wonderful having you both here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
us.
Thank you.
And thank you, dedicated listener, for sharing a few minutes of your busy day with us. We will be back, as always, next week, same time, same place, to hear from another climate action figure. Until then, go figures.
This has been Climate Action Figures. Our show is produced and hosted by John Whidden. Our creative consultant is Kayla McIntosh. Our theme song is Hawaii Vacation by Tavari. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Climate Action Figures. That's all one word. And if you have any other questions or comments that arose from this or any episode, feel free to reach out to us at climateactionfigures@gmail.com. And thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another Climate Action Figure.